The psychedelic revolution is here. If you want to integrate your visionary experiences into your purpose, get clear on your entrepreneurial path, and help people while you do what you love, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to The Psychedelic Entrepreneur, medicine for these times. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a spiritual business coach, 3-time entrepreneur, and a lifelong student of psychedelics and sacred plant medicines. You carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times. This podcast will help you to share your medicine so you can create transformation in the world. Listen in on conversations with psychedelic leaders, changemakers, and conscious entrepreneurs who are living proof that a better world is possible when you follow your heart and live in alignment with your soul. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here with my friend Daniel Shankin. Hi, Daniel. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always great to hang out.
So if you don't know Daniel, he's a psychedelic integration coach, and he serves people with emerging spiritual visions as they weave their newfound truths into their lives in a way that is sustainable, harmonious, compassionate, and wise. His methods are fiercely practical while maintaining space for mystery and magic to emerge. He offers time-tested and scientifically backed tools so clients can create a life for themselves that is aligned with their deeper values and manifest measurable results that matter. As the founder and director of Tam Integration, he's committed to offering radically accessible and inclusive support and education for people who are wanting to transform, heal, and grow. Tam's integration circles and online conferences enjoy a worldwide audience and much critical acclaim. He also leads the year-long Mount Tam Psychedelic Integration Coaching Program, training emerging leaders in the facilitation of transformational engagement. He and his wife live in a tiny New England town where they forage for mushrooms and throw rocks into creeks with their toddler and soon-to-be toddler.
Oh, right.
Daniel,
We've got to add River. We got to add Cedar to the bio.
Yes, I noticed that. I'm like, well, now you have a toddler and a toddler emerging, a newborn, kind of a newborn. Daniel, let's get into it. I think a lot of people know your story, and I've had you on here before, so let's go into the juice and skip your story. But I want to hear, if that's okay.
Please. Yeah, my story is not interesting.
No, it is actually very interesting, but I've heard it at least 5 or 6 times. So I will actually link to your previous interview so everybody can hear your story of how you got into the psychedelic path, became a teacher, your whole story. But I want to get into the work that you're up to now and what's alive for you in the present moment in the psychedelic space as a teacher and a trainer, and as someone who's producing the upcoming Integration Jam in just a few weeks.
What's really interesting to me is just finding a path with heart through the psychedelic space, a path that relies on kind of generosity of spirit and depth of experience and rigorous practice. And that sort of eschews a lot of perhaps dominant narratives about what psychedelics are supposed to be or who's supposed to be in charge of them. And just doing that work sort of just really in my lane, like sort of the old adage of stay in your lane, keep your own side of the street clean. And, letting myself stay out of fights that I don't have a dog in. It's one of the things that the psychedelics constantly show me is that as somebody who is deeply ADHD, we haven't covered that in a past story, so I'll bring it up. As someone who's deeply ADHD, the process of simplifying is really, really good for me because my attention has a tendency to proliferate like a hydra or something like that. My attention can go far and wide, and that can actually be draining. So finding, what my heart most longs for and what's most important and where I can actually have impact has been super important.
Mm. That's interesting. This came up for me earlier this week as I returned home and witnessed my beehive. So I keep bees, and we both live somewhat near each other where it's cold all winter. And the bees are flying around, and I make this video about it, and I say this has nothing to do with business, it has nothing to do with psychedelics, but it's actually what's most important, and to really stay connected to that heart and that place of, what are we all here for? What is the ultimate goal in the psychedelic space? And it's interesting because we were chatting before the recording started, we were chatting a little about some of these big conferences, including one coming up. And I said, I'm scared to see, a trade show of psychedelic products and like new psychedelic things, VR or whatever it is, like apps and trainings and programs. And it's like, well, what are we all doing here? I'm curious, what is your take on where the psychedelic space is right now, and where do you think it's heading? And do you feel like we're heading in the right direction? Whatever right means.
Again, my take on my psychedelic, we all actually have our own psychedelic spaces, right? So, when I think about the conference, I don't want to focus on the stuff that I'm not interested in. We can have a tendency to really talk about like what we don't want in our salad, as Abraham Hicks would say. Instead of building the salad that we want. And so in my psychedelic space, the people who I'm in contact with are my students who are very sincere and eager and brilliant and doing wonderful work right now they're growing themselves because it's a coaching training. And so what that means is that I just make them coach each other within an inch of their life, and they're having breakdowns and they're having breakthroughs and they're growing and learning and opening up in ways that they didn't expect, because they were just like, I just want to be able to talk to people about their trips. And the thing about people's trips is that the people's trips are about their lives, and they're like deep, deep inner lives. And so that stuff starts to come up, and they're like, oh, like that hallucination I had on mushrooms relates to my father and what kind of father he was and what kind of father I want to be, and like da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden there are tears and there's more space to move into a rich, fulfilling life. So I have those people on one hand. And then on the other hand, I get to do the Integration Jam. I've got this conference coming up where I get to work with leaders in the field who I respect and want to learn from, right? Who I get to just be like, who has things to say about integration and preparation that I want to learn? Can I convince them to come and teach me, and then put them on stage, right? And so it's an excuse to kind of like hang out with people that I think are cool and learn from them. And then offer, and in the realm of impact, offer that to the world for people who maybe don't want to just like fly around the world to conferences all the time, but want to check in from their own home. So that's my psychedelic space. And then like whoever happens to be in my nearby community and things like that, and my friends. So I'm less worried about the stuff that I'm not interested in doesn't touch me all that much. Like I'm not in, and God bless the people who are willing to fight for decriminalization and legalization and things like that. It's not necessarily in my constitution to like argue about the finer points of law. Like I can't do that and do this, right? And so I chose this. And so I don't know about that. Every once in a while it's like, oh, did you see what somebody is going to do within the, in Washington State? And I was like, no, I didn't. Like, I'll listen to you for a little bit. And, oh, that sucks. And yeah, we definitely want it to be more like this, but I can't fight that. That fight.
I'm too busy fighting to like energy.
I'm too busy fighting to convince my students that they're great. Like that's my fight. I'm just arguing with people's small-minded, limited conceptions of themselves and trying to get them to let go of them. That's the battle.
You are worthy. I love it. People join the psychedelic integration training thinking, oh, I just want to talk to people about their trips. And then it ends up being this deep transformational journey. And I get it. It's like,
right.
They're like, I didn't sign up for this. I thought I was just going to be a trip sitter and talk to people afterwards. But I love that. And that is the reality, right? It's like, we are the wounded healers helping others through this healing process. But then, it's like you said, every trip is it's not a trip, it's this relational process. And there's always going to be stuff that comes up. And I'm curious, let's talk about integration. So the title for this show that you suggested was Integrating into Everything, something like that. And I've been saying this for a long time as well, where I believe integration is not just something you do after a journey and then you walk away and that's that. It's kind of just integration is daily, and it actually has nothing to do with psychedelics, right? It's integration. And it's like being a human here on earth right now, alive. But let's talk about what you believe integration is. And from the perspective as a teacher who trains people who are going to go out there and become integration coaches or space holders or a little of both. What is integration to you?
Maybe a three-part answer. So kind of simply what it has come to mean is taking the lessons you learned in a journey and incorporating them into your life, right? So maybe you learn that you should say thank you more often and say I'm sorry more often and mean it. It's like, okay, I can be more grateful. I have to apologize to those people. I can be in a better relationship with folks, and I should not look at my phone so much, maybe, right? But then the other thing that happens, the second part, is that we discover, this is sort of like the IFS, internal family systems, kind of shadow work kind of model, where inner child healing kind of stuff, where we discover unloved parts of ourselves locked away, parts of us that have been hurt or been denied or whatever, and then welcoming them back home, right? And that's really more integrative. So there's like an unloved part of you through no fault of its own, right? You just decided it was unlovable and you pushed it into a basement, right? And then that appears, and then you welcome it back home and you bring that part of your psyche and energy back into yourself to create a more whole and authentic version of who you are. Mm-hmm. Right? And so that's kind of an integrative thing. And then also we want to take into account that we are relational beings. So we kind of mentioned it a little bit in the first section, but integrating ourselves into our own lives. So sometimes we're alienated from our own life. And so integration means I come into greater harmony with, my wife, my kids, my coworkers, my employees, my employers, my community, and then the natural world as well. I one of the things that I really love is when people come out of journeys and they recognize how that they're a part of nature, and that they sort of work. I need to be outside. 9 times out of 10, if you're talking to somebody who feels trapped in their life necessarily, they're like, oh, I'm stuck at my desk, or I'm stuck in this situation or that situation. And you take them through like a visualization practice. It's like, okay, you're stuck at your desk. Where do you want to be that's free? It's outside. Everybody puts themselves on a beach or a mountaintop or in the woods or in a field or something. Nobody's like, oh, I would be in a different industrial building.
Floors and lights.
Yeah. I mean, every once in a while you might get like a concert. But even then, people, it would be my guess that it'd be an outdoor festival.
Beautiful. A lot is coming up around this idea of what you just said about really digging in, finding these unloved parts of ourselves, which, of course, I've actually just done the next level of that journey myself, which was deep and intense and very challenging, but beautiful. But I wonder, there's a lot of, because I deal with a lot of clients that are probably similar to yours, because I get a lot of clients that come out of integration training programs, and there's a lot of these like really deep limiting beliefs that they're still not good enough to help someone on their journey, or help someone through their integration process, or maybe I need to go do 5 more years of training or 10 more years, and then I'll be okay, and then I'll be worthy, then I'll be enough. And I'm curious, what are your beliefs around someone doing, let's say, your training program, and maybe they've done a lot of their own work, and maybe they're dedicated meditation practitioners and dedicated to some other spiritual paths. when is someone ready, and when is someone actually just caught up in the limiting belief patterns of not being good enough or not being worthy enough or just not being enough, from a,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, a pattern, like a pattern that developed as a child, like
Yeah.
where, do you run into this a lot with your clients? And if so, how do you
Impo-
remedy this?
Imposter syndrome. I actually just
Yeah,
made a reel
deep.
about imposter syndrome. And
Oh my God.
interestingly enough, after I made the reel, I watched Shazam 2 because I'm not too good to watch superhero movies.
I don't
It's
even
a
know what that
superhero
is.
movie.
Oh,
It's a superhero movie, and with a superhero that is wrestling with imposter syndrome. That he's not good enough just because he's strong and bulletproof. Like he still doesn't know what to do, and he's because it's actually a child that says Shazam and turns into a grown man that's bulletproof, and so there's a struggle there, and it's probably not a terrible. I haven't really unpacked the metaphor, but we could. So I don't know when somebody's ready, except for my students. Right. And the thing that's really fun about the training, I came up in the yoga world, taking yoga teacher trainings, doing yoga teacher trainings, leading them and things like that. And it's a real focus on practical skills, getting people in and out of poses in a way that's going to be safe for them and effective for them. Right. In and out of poses, and then preparing and integrating. Because there's some yoga poses that you have to prepare for before you do them. You don't want to just right off the bat do headstand. It's not safe. And then after headstand, there's certain things you need to do for the head, neck, and shoulders to make sure that you're safe, right? So you're always in a well-constructed yoga class, you're always preparing for the pose that comes next, and you're always integrating the pose that came before. And then that is a symphonas. So my training is just really skills based. My students don't need me to tell them to watch 100 different YouTube videos. It's like they need to practice. So let's say that they're well practiced and that they can hold space. They can ask evocative questions and they can help create action plans for people in a way that's not going to be overwhelming for them and still move them forward. So let's say they have all of that, right? Then we look at the internal stuff of this imposter syndrome. I can't do this. I need more training. I need that. That is a form of self-centeredness, right? Pure and simple. And it could come from trauma, and it could come from upbringing, and it could be culturally constructed. I don't know why they have it. The point is that it's all about, the person has made it all about them. I'm not good enough. Somebody's going to find out, and then I'm going to be humiliated. Or some variation of that. I'm not good enough. Someone's going to find out. Nobody's going to like me. Nobody's going to want to sit next to me at lunch, right? That's what imposter syndrome is. Nobody's going to want to sit next to me at lunch. And that is in some ways a luxury, right? That's a luxury that I can't afford, right? And that if you have, that if you're comfortable having a practice, like a professional practice that doesn't work, like if you're comfortable, eking by, always worrying about this, or you have some other kind of funding, you've got VC funding, or your partner makes money, you have family money or whatever, then you have the luxury of wringing your hands together saying, I'm not good enough. The rest of us who actually want to be of service, who want to A, not starve, and B, who have actually been shown by some sort of psychedelic Jedi council, right? In the Sirius star system, and they were like, we want you on the team. You're helping us heal the planet. Right. And so there's those of us who they know what I'm talking about. The Jedi Council and the multidimensional Syrian star system. You're on the team. You're initiated. Get busy. And those beings are not like, to what extent is the Ashtar command like trauma informed? Like, do they, because they didn't, They were like, yeah. Like they were like, get to work. And some of that work is like me dealing with my own trauma and taking care of myself and stuff like that. But it was also like, you're here to help stop the destruction of planet Earth from happening a third time. You are here just like Bob Marley said, herb is for the healing of the nations. Like if you're on the team of like healing the nations, then like you don't have time to be self-centered, right? That is not the healing of the nations. The healing of the nations is to care for other people and to serve and to serve and to serve and to serve. And so it's a perspective shift. It's a lack of compassion, and it's a totally self-centered way of being. And do what you have to do to kind of see it for what it is, and not a knowledge issue, a training issue, an education issue. It's a self-centeredness versus compassion and empathy issue.
So well said. And I'm sitting here smiling because I say a lot of these in using different language to my clients when they get in that loop of the imposter syndrome and not being enough and not good enough. Who am I to do this? And, I look back on my own self and I'm like, well, yeah, I always felt that way on some level. Cause again, like society, upbringing, trauma, whatever. But at the same time, I was like, I needed to work. I needed to make money. I knew I actually had something to do here on planet Earth. And it's funny that you mentioned Syrians, because I was like, how'd you know that that's who I'm talking to? But
because I'm half psychic when I'm not trying.
I know. I'm like, because we're probably both on part of the same star family. But
if I try to do it, if I try to give somebody a psychic reading, none of it works. But
and my dad, who's Syrian, or I'm convinced was Syrian, his name was Daniel. Mm-hmm. But no, it's funny because for me, I actually had no other option. I mean, I kind of got to the point where I was like, first of all, like there's something in my heart that is pulling me. This is why I say mission over ego, more towards the path of service than the path of me being in my, not good enough, or my fear or my doubts. I mean, the reality is, yeah, of course, I still have that on some level with certain things. I go to launch something new. It's like, oh shit, am I able to do this? Can I do this? Am I going to be canceled from the internet? But then it's like mission comes before that part of myself. And on some level, I do believe you're right. It's like, it's a luxury. It's selfish. And I always question, like, don't you guys need to like survive? Like, that's how I saw it. I mean, I was kind of like at a really low point many, many, many years ago where I was like, I have to work, and I have to work hard, and I actually have to make something happen. I also would be bored if I was just doing trainings and not actually helping people eventually. So this is great what you say. And I do believe at the same time, especially with what's happening on the planet, and people are suffering, and now there's people stepping into working with psychedelics and don't have support or don't have integration help. It's like, I do believe on some level people are needed, like you are actually needed to help people. I mean, there's people's practices are maxed out, and there's a limit to the amount of people, let's say one therapist can help. And that's where it's actually imperative that people are out there helping people and putting their work into practice. Now, I want to get into a little bit around I want to talk about the integration jam, but also let's say integration coaching as a practice or a business. You're training people who are hopefully going to go out there and want to start helping people or sitting with people or a combination of both. What is the general consensus and feel around getting paid money for this, or getting clients and accepting in the money? Like, what do people want? And are people having, fears around this? Or are they feeling like I should just do this for free? Are there people that actually want to make it into a real living? Like, I'm curious what your take is coming from, the world that you're in with your training.
You asked me like 7 questions.
Yeah, I know. But it's all coming back to like the business aspect, money, making money as an integration coach. How are people feeling about this, and how do you feel about it? Is this okay to make money helping people through psychedelic integration?
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Who thinks it's not?
Well, there's people that think psychedelics should all be free, and that no one should charge for sitting with someone who's, let's say, doing a mushroom journey.
Are those people with like real jobs and 401ks and
No,
healthcare?
Yeah, I don't know.
So they
Um,
probably are, right? So there's like a real interesting like employed privilege, right? People love to talk about privilege, white privilege, male privilege, whatever. And like I've been an independent healing artist for 20 years. The integration coach wasn't a gig when in 1999. There were like maybe 3 therapists in Berkeley or something. I don't know. But I was a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, and there's this like why do we feel like our spiritual practitioners should be broke? Why do we want to like continue to oppress our witches? Like it's not bad. It's this puritanical thing where we have to burn our witches at the stake, or we have to crucify them at the altar of poverty for some reason. And we have people who are working for Monsanto. Like, why isn't food free, by the way? There's that joke in the new Doctor Strange movie. I'm just going to quote superhero movies the whole time, where this woman who travels interdimensionally is like, oh yeah, in most universes, food is free. It's weird that you guys have to pay for yours. But it's like what people who work for Monsanto or IBM or some these nameless, faceless corporations that are in the process of like raping and destroying our world, our natural landscape, and kind of creating ecological disasters and dumping oil into the sea and poisoning our children, and you're allowed to get paid for that. But your witches and your healers, you think that should be free while you hemorrhage money. The only plant medicine that it's somehow acceptable to buy is alcohol, and the only plant medicine provider that is allowed to get paid is a bartender. It doesn't make any sense to me that somebody with health care would begrudge a healing artist making their living. So, I mean, I don't really know. I feel very, yeah. So, plus they've got time. I don't know what else to say about that. I think that's enough.
Thank you so much for sharing that. This is no, it's good. I brought this up because I told Daniel before this interview that I wanted to maybe speak about money on him during the integration jam, which who knows, maybe we will, maybe not. And this has been a very triggering subject for people in the psychedelic space, whether they're working in it or fans or just purely following us out of curiosity. And I've never understood why this is such an issue, but it's like you said, it's like, well, I really like that analogy. It's like, well, why should the witches be burned at the stake and be made to suffer, but Monsanto, like I shouldn't say no one's really fighting it. People are fighting it, but not every day. It's like we're not out there yelling at them.
You're still buying their food.
Yeah, well, I really don't think I am. I hope not.
Well,
but yeah,
are.
Most people are.
And the thing, what was the other thing? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the privilege part. It's a privilege to think that psychedelics are free. And I always bring up, there's a reality to this. They don't just grow, maybe somewhere mushrooms grow in the wild, but most people are cultivating. I say ayahuasca, if you've ever been in person actually helping make ayahuasca, it's like no joke how much labor goes into that. And then having someone sit for you for however many hours or hold a ceremony, it's not just like a 5-hour session. There's so much more to it. And where's the value in paying for someone, and their time and energy?
It's just, I think that it's important to notice the difference between a dedicated healing artist who spent their life practicing and training, right, to be qualified so that they're not an imposter, and that person might do well, right? So let's say, me and you, we're healing artists, we do okay, versus some sort of VC, like some sort of just like big money like real capitalism, You know, it's like we're
Compass pathways.
whatever, yeah, that kind of thing. So there's like a difference between people who are like kind of taking control of the means of production, which is basically communist activity, right? It's like we're regular people, and we've taken hold of the means of production, and we produce something of value to the people, versus sort of like exploitative corporate greed. And just
Very
because
big
somebody
difference.
is kind of doing okay sometimes, I'm doing okay sometimes. I've had more lean years than fat years, that's for sure. But just, you know, recognizing, you know, who are the folks. You know, we're just, you know, just take care of your folks all the way around.
That's what I always say when I get the hater once in a while. I'm like, wait, you're hating on me, who's just an individual with a team of women who are raising children and working in the U.S. that I pay like a fair wage to, and you're bashing me when there's, you know, like, yeah, like you said, like there's a bunch of VCs out there, or there's companies employing, you know, people below minimum wage in other countries. You know, I could go on and on. So I do find it funny and interesting to see why this is such a charged subject when there's a lack of perspective around, you know, like pick your battles. And yeah, next time someone comes at me with some hate, I'll say, hey, are you fighting Monsanto? Because that's actually probably more important. You know, mushrooms or Monsanto, you know.
And I'll
But we
share
only
with
have
anybody. I'll share with anybody
huh?
who wants. I'll share with anybody who wants to build skills. You know, to be successful. You know, if all of the information on it took me a long time to figure out how to run my business like a business. But the information's out there. You can go onto YouTube and you can learn how to do anything. You can learn how to throw a podcast on YouTube. It's not hard to make changes that are going to add value to the world. And I would just hope that anybody who's listening, you know, you can do something today to move in the direction of the life that you want. And really the life that I want, you know, what has moved me in that direction is just like serving others. You know, you do the stuff that you're good at, and you help the people in front of you as much as you can, and your life gets better.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to point out that you mentioned that, hey, I've had some leaner years over fatter years, and it's true. It's like, you know, I always remind my clients and remind people listening to me, it's like there were really tough years that were bad, like negative amounts of money, like struggle, working my ass off. And that's one thing I will say too. It's like, I've also noticed a level of entitlement out there where it's like, oh, well, I post on Instagram. Why am I not making millions? And I'm like, dude, I have like been dedicated, you know, for years and years and years and years and years. And not to say that it's not possible to have some, you know, maybe something goes viral and you blow up and next thing you know, you are a millionaire. But there is a reality to being of service. It's a dedication, it's a path, and it's a commitment. And it's not just like I sit back and hang out on a beach and manifest, you know, five or six figures. You know, I wish it was that easy. But there is a reality. And, you know, especially when people get caught up in the loops of like not good enough, or what is it? I try to put myself out there. Why am I not getting clients? It's like, well, you've tried for 3 months. You know, it took me 3 to 4 years to finally get up to a consistency, you know, and that's years. And that was like dedication. But let's get into the integration jam since we only have a little bit left. I want to hear about this year, if there's a theme, you know, who you're having on. Is it going to be like, are we getting into anything weird? Like, tell me about, or tell the audience about the integration jam and why they should attend.
Why should they attend is because whether you're just a beginner who's curious about psychedelics and how to approach them mindfully with good practice, with best practices, or you're looking to get into the space and find a place for you to work and thrive, or if you want to be an integration coach, or integration, maybe you're a therapist and you want more psychedelic information in your life, you would be hard pressed to find a better group of people who are just going to lay down like a multifaceted view of what the landscape is like in like a rich, unfiltered way. One of the things about the panels is you can't buy your way onto them. You know, somebody was telling me that they've been on conference tour and it's the same executives of the same psychedelic companies over and over again talking about how amazing their pharmaceutical product is going to be and their view for a medicalized future. And those people pay for 4 to 5 figures to be on those stages. It would probably be smart from a business perspective for me to sell spots on the panels, but it's like Shane Norte, the indigenous church leader of the Church of the People for Creator and Mother Earth, isn't going to do that. I got to pay him, and this guy runs high dose sessions up in the high desert with veterans, and where else are you going to talk to him? Nick Walker is an amazing somatic practitioner. She worked with one of my teachers. There's a guy that I studied with online like many, many years ago and read his books. And he had this like somatic embodiment practice that I would see online. I was like, that stuff is amazing. And Nick studied with him and has somatic practices for the psychedelic experience. Is unique. It's hard. You'd be hard pressed to get FaceTime with Nick. We've got Carolyn Lee, the death doula. We've got Farm Boy Slim from TikTok. Do you know Farm Boy Slim?
I thought that I was confused. No, but I was like, wait, Fat Boy Slim, and then I was like, wait, no, Farm Boy Slim.
Farm Boy Slim.
No, I don't do TikTok yet.
He's got 500,000 followers on TikTok. He dresses up like a mushroom and talks about his life and harm reduction and things like that. He's brilliant, wonderful guy. Great.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gotta have him on my podcast. I actually thought Fat Boy Slim when I saw it, and then I'm like, huh?
Yeah. We've got some panels with some great, like some old heads, like Elizabeth from Altered States and Greg Lawrence from Psychedelia LA and Otto Mayer and things like that. We're doing some microdosing with Robin, who runs our women's circles. Ito Cohen, talking about the golden shadow. Gotta love Ito Cohen. Like, where are you going to find a more skilled therapist who's a better understanding of how the shadow emerges and how we need to work with it in psychedelic space? I don't know who else. And it's funny because I asked Lauren Taus, who's a therapist, and she's going to be doing some stuff about family. She might bring her dad on. High heritage, she calls it. And, I asked her, I was like, who else? She was like, really, like, you should try and get Ito Cohen. Like, if you can get Ito Cohen, you're good. I was like, we got him. Great.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to write, because I know him and I've never invited him onto my podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of am inspired to do like, it's like you said, like do a talk that has nothing to do with business, but maybe it's something really edgy. Maybe I should talk about money.
What would I want you to talk about?
Well, I did this talk, when was it, 2 years ago, when I talked about manifesting with psychedelics, which, by the way, I actually really, that's like one of my favorite things, is to get into the energetics of how to work with psychedelics and, for, like, how do you put this nicely? For co-creation, not manifesting. I don't know. I can talk about shadow stuff. I just went through a really like intense shadow portal for 4 or 5 months, and it was great.
Really,
it was the hardest thing I've been through in probably my adult life, and I think I've come out of it with huge gifts and lessons. But to go into that space of meeting like the depths of the darkest, deepest grief and pain. And it's an area where I think a lot of people really avoid especially in psychedelic space, but in general, as being a human, because it's so painful. But there's so much gold there.
Yeah. Talking about grief is so huge. People don't even know the word. You know what I mean? Like I talk to my clients and they're trying to describe what they're going through. And I was like, grief? You're talking about grief?
And then there's different aspects of grief, like anticipated grief that I didn't know that feeling. I was like, what is this feeling? Oh, like I have an aging parent that was, has been challenging lately. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, how can I be grieving? She's still alive. So it's not that. And then I found out the terminology was called anticipatory grief. And I'm like, whoa.
Do you have like
it's
a grief
expert? It's nice to give it a name.
Do you have like a grief expert that you could come on with and have a grief discussion?
Ooh, I actually have a couple people I could reach out to. Yes.
So let
me get on that. Yeah, it's like really meening the death state, like an ego death without any medicine, like an ego death for 5 months straight. But I really believe on some level, this is what our planet, we could go into, this is a whole another conversation. It's what our planet is experiencing. And so many of us are going to be forced to experience this. And it's the coping and the understanding of how to work with it to then not be in this perpetual state of grief forever and ever. Or at least hopefully not. But I'm excited for the Integration Jam. I do have to say, and I want the audience to hear this, I've been on it, I think, each year. And how many years is it now? 3? Right? 3 or 4?
3, yeah, 3. And 3? It's also like the 5th anniversary of Tam Integration.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Well, I do have to say, every talk I've given, I always get really good feedback. And I do have to say, it's fun that these panels are live. Like, that's the one thing I really like about your summit is that it's live. It feels very, like, communal. I knew a lot of the people that showed up. People, I think, knew each other. I think just from looking at the chat, and there is a nice community aspect. And that's something you've done very well, is built this kind of community that tends to know each other, even though maybe we don't know each other in real life yet. Mm-hmm. So that is another reason I would highly recommend joining in the Integration Jam and attending. And it's also like you said, okay, what are the alternatives? Go to a $2,000 conference. By the way, I didn't know people paid for slots at these conferences. Now I know. That's too bad. That makes sense. Now I understand how it's working. Next time I guess I need to offer them money. Just kidding. I don't have that kind of money to spend on a stupid speaking slot. Anyways, I know you have to go because the children call, but I want to leave you an opportunity to talk about where do you find you, what's coming up. We'll have all the links in the show notes. We will be sharing the Integration Jam. But yeah, let people know what do you have on the radar the next. Yeah. So
where to find me? tamintegration.com. Tam Integration on Instagram. Instagram is probably the platform I use the most. If you or LinkedIn, you can just Daniel Shankin on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been treating me really well. What do I have coming up? I'm doing a bunch of talks kind of on what I think makes a good integration coach. What integration coaching is, because I believe that it is more than just telling people the difference between the Fadiman protocol and the Stamets protocol. It's not just downloading information about microdosing. It's about, creative, evocative conversations that give people opportunities for transformation. And that it's, a relationship that is a service-based relationship that really helps people grow. And so I've been doing a lot of those talks, honestly, also because I've got a coaching program starting in October. And I've got 20 spots, and I'm pretty sure that a quarter of them are full, but I would just as soon get it full with the right people as soon as possible. Rightness of fit is really important to me. But I would be on the lookout for info sessions. I'll be doing info sessions every couple of weeks. Until that time, and integration circles happen, and Tam Integration we're doing as much as we can to be of maximum service at every price point, including free. So it's not like we don't have free stuff. It's just different things are for different offerings are for different people. That's what it comes down to. That's where you find me, Tam Integration.
Perfect.
And consult your third eye.
And consult your third eye. And also, I do want to offer up, if anyone wants to talk to me about Daniel's work, I've hired him, I've worked with him, and I can recommend him. I've done this I have a past client in your training right now. So I'm always I
have a past client in your training right now.
Oh. Wait, I'm trying to think, who is that?
I don't know. I just usually do. People often.
It's so funny. We usually do. I know, right?
It's a lot of overlap.
So it's nice to get all these opinions on which program is right for you. But Daniel, I'm so excited to see you on the Integration Jam in just a couple weeks. Thank you so much. Many blessings for your wisdom and doing this work for our society and the world. And tell the kiddos hi.
Well, save 10% with coupon code Beth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're feeling inspired, I'd appreciate it if you showed your love with a review. And check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also head to bethaweinstein.com to learn more about me and grab my free business growth trainings. Remember, you carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times.